Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to share with you something that I thought was great. I found this on Kickstarter and it's a Stalingrad Solitaire game. I mean, come on, who couldn't use another World War II game? I know, there's already a lot, right? But can never have enough, and it's Stalingrad, and the thing that got me the most is it's solitaire. So yay. We're looking at operational level. As we get down into it, we'll see a little bit more. So it's kind of a big scale. It's not just inside the city, but it's a lot of moving pieces around the battle in general. Right now, it is funded. You can see that they had a $6,000 goal and they've already got 12,000. That's great because that's going to contribute to some of the stretch goals that we'll talk about. They got 190 backers already with 27 days to go. So we're early in the campaign, and that's why I wanted to hop in here and tell you about this. I don't work for the company. I just reached out, was interested if I could help contribute in some way, and this is what I'm doing. I'm helping to spread the word as a fan. So let's look at the campaign. This is focusing on the 6th Army, which was trapped inside this area they call the Cauldron. All right, and the idea is for your game is you're going to try and link up with the relief forces from Hoth, General Hoth. He's moving troops up. You're trying to link up and get the troops out. That's it. And there's a lot to make that happen. So what I like about it is basically there are, I'm trying not to give away too much, but um, I'll tell you what, let's look at the Kickstarter first, then we'll go and take a look at some of the rules, and then we'll also take a look at some of the map and playing pieces that will help maybe fit this a little bit better than me just trying to describe how it all puts together. Okay. Plus, if you want to know more for yourself, definitely come to the Kickstarter page. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter in the description of the video. And if you are watching from someplace where you can't read the comments or click on links, just go to Kickstarter, do a search for Stalingrad. You're going to find Stalingrad Solitaire by Canvas Temple Publishing, and you can get right in on the Kickstarter. All right, first, the Kickstarter page has got a nice map graphic and it's got some of the counters. And this is the thing that got me hooked right away was one, it's a gorgeous looking map. The map is 22 by 17 inches, so it's not really large. So that's good. That's great. I'm already looking at something that's not a huge footprint. Also, it isn't counter dense as well, which was another plus. I do enjoy when we have enough to represent the divisions and the armies involved, but it's not overwhelming either. So this is like a really good game to hop in on, especially if you're learning. Also, what was really nice was the counters are going to be 3/4 of an inch, so they're not like the small half inch. So these are a little bit bigger. Not a full inch that some folks like, so 3/4 I think is still a pretty good size for you to play on. So this is going to be really good in that regards too, because I was reading in some of the comments. First of all, I thought, okay, they got a great sense of humor because he was talking about how he's getting older. It's difficult to manage the smaller pieces, so he's really focusing on designing games that are just easily accessible to everyone. So I think they're on to a really good start. Also, you can also come and read the rules for yourself too, because they've got a preliminary draft of the rules. The one thing they didn't have yet was any kind of gameplay video. So all the information you need is pretty much here, but I'm going to be working on a gameplay video later on. I've read through the rules once. We'll pull those up and look at them as well so you can kind of see what's in there. And then of course, come here and you can check it out for yourself. Game scale, the turns represent about 1 to 5 days. What I thought was really nice too was this sense that it's not a simulation. That might be one thing that you're asking yourself. Is this just a game or is this an actual like hardcore simulation? When reading some of the designer notes in the rules, which I highly encourage that you do, they're talking about how it's more a game than simulation. So you're not going to be worried about what happened on, like say December 18 or something like that. You don't you might historically know everything that happened on a certain day, but in this game, you're in command. You're taking charge of the armies and you're deciding what happens when and where. So this has some latitude as to what happened historically. So you're going to decide the outcome of the battle with the choices that you make. So I thought that was really good too. Um, the map board itself represents about 35 by 65 miles. So again, it's a rather large area that you're playing on. It's not just the city. All right, so here's the map. Like I said, we'll take a close-up look at here in a second and explain what some of the different parts of the map are. And then there's the playing pieces, which represent some of the bigger divisions that were involved. And then you're going to get some administrative counters. So again, not super counter dense at all. Also, you're going to have about 25 cards that will be used to determine some random events that happen on and some gameplay affecting things like the weather. And we'll show the cards when we get there to the game as well. And that is one of the stretch goals, is to turn these into actual playing cards, because I think it's said in the stretch goal that these are originally going to be like cards that are on like cardstock. So one of the stretch goals is to put them into actual playing cards. So I definitely want us to reach that goal. So as we just scroll down, some of the things you get, it's one sheet of 1 inch die cut. Oh, okay, never mind. I read somewhere 3/4 of an inch, but it's saying here they are 1 inch. So that's fantastic if it's 1 inch. And we got the map sheet, the book of rules, your player aid card, and then 3 sheets of the playing cards. So I'm hoping, that's why I'm hoping these are going to get turned into actual deck of playing cards. First stretch goal, they've already got, because 12,000 is where they're currently at. So they've got the box. So normally this game would be coming out in some kind of like a Ziploc bag format. So this is cool that you're going to get it boxed. And then here's the second stretch goal at 13,000, which they're very close to getting, and that's to make those full-size playing cards instead of the die-cut ones that you're seeing up here. And then finally, this is the one, that's the stretch goal I really wanted to reach, and that's the mounted map. So the game's already at 12,000, so you're coming very close to getting a mounted map. I know, I've talked to plenty of people in comments that they're totally fine with paper maps, and there's nothing wrong with paper map if it lets you play. I'm just a real sucker for mounted maps, so I would love to see this get pushed up. And that's why I reached out, because I said to myself, I like the game idea, but I would like it even more on a mounted map. So that's why I'm here. I'm hoping we can push this up. All right. And then of course then it goes into, why support us, and then here's one of the first pages from the playbook, rule book. And over here, the pledge levels, you've got $46 or more, you get your copy of the game. That's actually a really good price, I think, especially if you can get it up to the mounted map. I think that you're going to get a really, really good game for a really good price with really good components. So please, please pledge. There's also, you can get 2 copies of the game, 6 copies of the game for like a retailer. So I think a lot of people will be happy with just a $46 pledge. That's actually really good. And you'd have to look in here to verify where the shipping costs will be. But again, as you continue down the Kickstarter, there's one of the charts that you'll get, and there's the shipping costs right there. So please, please come check out the Kickstarter page and read about it. Okay, so that's enough talking about the Kickstarter page. Some of the things that I'm sharing are, of course, all visibly here for you. I just want to share my enthusiasm for the Kickstarter. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rulebook. So I've got it opened up over here. I'll just minimize that. And let's make that a little easier for you to see the pages here. 1 page. That should work. All right. First of all, the rulebook isn't even that big. Okay, if we start here at about page 1, and if I just scroll all the way through, it hits about page 16. Now, the thing is that I want to keep you in mind of while we're looking at this and then some of the components is that this is not final. After I was talking with Canvas Temple Publishing, they got to go through and of course do, rules, corrections, check for mistakes, things like that, right? So this is not final. But if you're looking at it right now as is, you've got 16 pages, but page 16 is blank. Page 15 also is blank. And the last couple pages are like your player aids, right? So there's your relief tables, Luftwaffe force commitments table, right? So you got a couple pages of tables. rumors table. So that's like 3 pages right there. And then, of course, as you get to the end, you got some optional rules, some basic strategies, which is also a good rule. There's the designer notes, which again I read and gave some really good insight into kind of the game philosophy, well, the situation, and then you had the game design, which has got game philosophy. So I think very, very fun stuff to read. Then I would say about that's about what, page 14? Oh, page 8. Trying to get, oh yeah, page 8. So really, you're looking at about, well, then there's a sample turn, historical scenario setup. So really, that's like 6 pages of rules all together that you have. So this is a really, really well written game. It doesn't take much, and you can be in there fighting, which I did. I just read the rules in a short amount of time, and I was ready to start playing. What I like about it is the sequence of play is laid out really well, and it follows the rules perfectly. So it starts you right with like the strategic phase, random event, draw a card, and the rules follow that step by step, just follows you straight on through. So if you were going to play for the first time, if you just started right here with the strategic phase of the game and just read it and played through, this would walk you through a turn of the game. So again, really well thought out rule system. Now, that's the thing though a lot of people are asking is, well, how does it play? Okay, well, as you can see, you got one, two, three, four main phases. There's your strategic phase, the German phase, Soviet phase, evaluation phase. What's really nice is these beginning phases don't take that long. So there's like a random event phase where you just draw one of those 25 cards. It'll have some event on it that may or may not have an event or something happen. Then you draw another card to determine weather for the day. Then you're going to roll for Luftwaffe commitment, which is going to determine how much air support you have for the day. You're going to check your relief force commitment to see how close the General Hoth is getting close to relieving you. Check the morale for everything that's involved, how many initiative points you have for the day, and then resolve the airlift to see if you're able to get wounded soldiers out and how much support you're getting there. Conduct unit upkeep, so like how much food are you going to feed out to your troops and give them supplies. It really only takes a couple minutes to kind of run through that sequence to set up the rest of the game. And that's when it gets into the German phase. And this is interesting. There's this including appeals. I thought this was kind of cool. Um, it's a very nice, simple way of saying that there's not much that you can do unless you have like permission to do it, because there's some rules in there that say like if you issue attacks but you don't have permission, you can get some penalties for that. So your attack goes through, but that's not good for you. And I'm simplifying it, but I thought that was kind of interesting that there's a whole thing where even though you're the commander, you're still subservient to the commanders above you even. And then it goes on. There's, well, we can look again. It's right here in the rule book. You have up to 8 things you can do. Your appeal. You can prepare defenses in certain areas. You can move units. Tactical attack, which is a little bit different than like a full-on attack. Create a battle group, which is like pulling units together to make something out of nothing. Evacuate wounded, get them out, send them on their way. There's even a surrender. You can surrender in the game if you want. If things are going not your way, you can surrender. It's not really recommended, but it is an option. And then a regular attack option. And each step is, not much to it, usually like a little paragraph. The regular attack has some more details to it because that's the main thing that you might want to do. You're trying to fight your way out of the cauldron, and it has like how you resolve it, how you handle retreats. You can advance after action, filling in gaps. If you leave gaps from where you were, it gets filled in by like Russian divisions. They sneak in. What happens to break out of the pocket, relief force actions. So there's a few things there that happen uh, with attacking. All right, and again, just kind of after that, then you have the Soviet phase. They're checking for the final offensive, which has some effects on the game. So the way the game goes is you have about 8 turns before the Soviet army really ratchets up what it does. And then it's going to cost you a lot of extra points to do things because, and I'll explain points like how you do things here in a second. But it was just such a really cool system and how a lot of these pieces work together where it abstractly maybe represents a lot of things happening in the battle, but it just handles them so eloquently. So when you got the Russian final offensive going, it then is harder for the German player to do things because they're holding back the onslaught of the Soviet army. And how you manage those resources is also pretty important. And I'll show you that when we pull up the game board. But again, all of that is just held in about 6, 7 pages of rules. Okay, so what is held? That's the next thing I think that you'll like. So first you have the calculating your victory at the end, victory points at the end, and then here's the historical scenario setup. Now, what I'm about to show you is not available yet for the general public. I don't know when this will come out. I only have it because I talked to Canvas Temple Publishing and they said, sure, let's send you the vassal mod so you can kind of learn how to play and then maybe do like a brief demo how to play, which will come in a few days because I want to actually try playing through. This was more of a, hey, let's show you what the game looks like when it's set up. In the vassal mod, they graciously have a historical setup that you can play, and it automatically places everything that you have, all your units for the Soviets and the Germans. So this is what the starting looks like. And this represents like right over here. This over here is the city of Stalingrad, and then the rest of this is the fighting happening around the city. On the map, it's got a nice little reminder of your sequence of play, and even tells you exactly what tables to roll on for some of these activities. And the tables aren't that complicated either. So in the module, they've got the tables for you. So this will tell you what you're going to roll on. And these are tables in the rulebook as well. So nothing really hidden here, but they have it nicely in the vassal mod. And then depending on what you're doing, you'll just make a die roll modifier. So for example, this is where I liked, after reading the rules, where I was thinking, okay, this is coming together really, really good. For example, one of the things you're going to do is, first of all, check for a random event. I know I said I wouldn't be doing a playthrough, but I'm just kind of sneak peeking. So here you have your deck of cards. Let me shuffle up the cards. Okay, so first thing you do is you've got a card that you would draw, and you're going to flip it. And if I zoom in, maybe you can read that card a little bit better. Vassal is not the easiest to navigate around. Okay, card. So right there it says, hey, +2 to airlift roll this turn. All right, fantastic. I definitely want to keep that. Now, I don't have a discard pile here, so I'm just going to put it off to the side of the map. And then try to remember I've got +2 to the airlift. And then right there, check for weather. Again, you draw a card, flip it, and the weather is poor. And then right down here, you've got poor weather, and I'll just flip that. And I'm going to put this right below the discard because I want to remember. Now, we aren't going over all the components of the card because, again, you can find that in the rule book, but I'm just showing you how you would play it there. And then we're going to check for the Luftwaffe commitment. And this is cool because that's going to be modified by the weather, because in poor weather, the Luftwaffe can't, participate as much. And again, you just pull up your charts. There's a Luftwaffe relief force commitment table. I need to roll a die 6, which is right there. So I rolled a 6. Yay, lucky me. Modified by a couple items here we'll take a look at. Okay, airlift table is going to be modified by weather. My Luftwaffe support is actually modified by SSI. Oh, okay. So that's something to take a look at. We haven't covered that yet. So again, I mentioned there's several moving pieces that kind of work together. What's really cool is you have something called the SSI. And of course, without going back to the book, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it's basically kind of represents your strategic influence in the area. 10 is the maximum you can have. 0 would be bad. And if your strategic influence ever hits 0, you're out of the game. This has got 2 counters on there. So with the starting historical scenario, your strategic influence in the area is at a 10. So when I check that Luftwaffe commitment, I would take my die roll of 6, add in my SSI of 10, that's plus 2. So the grand total of this is a 7. So we have strong commitment. That that can have an effect on certain events later on. So I actually have a counter that I could put. So I'd put a counter here for markers, and we'll take a look at Luftwaffe. Commitment is strong because I rolled really well. Then you're going to look for the relief force commitment. Same thing, we're going to check to see if it's how committed the relief force is to trying to break through to us at that moment. So again, I'll roll a die 6. It's a 4. Add the plus 2 for the SSI, so that's strong as well. And again, that will have influence on certain things down the road when determining, events. So this is all setting up events for that turn, which remember could represent a span of several days. So that was strong. So let's find that relief right there. Relief force, strong. So we're looking good. Some of the things that you would set up based on the scenario is one, your turn marker, start at turn 1. And there's the final offensive. This is how close the Russians are getting to push you out, which their final offensive begins on turn 8. But there are certain things that you might happen which can influence that if it comes sooner or if you prevent it from advancing. How many wounded? And this is important because if you have a certain amount of wounded, that can have an effect on morale, and then the lower your morale, the fewer initiative points you have to play in the game. So it's very important that you spend, when you can, actions that you get each turn to fly wounded out of the city. And then, of course, here's the supply marker right there. And again, this is where I was saying it's so interesting how a lot of these pieces fit together when determining what you can do. One, you have initiative, which kind of represents your general's leadership ability in the theater to do things. So to do certain things like attack or fly people out might cost a certain amount of initiative points. And I'm trying to remember, I think you get like 1 initiative point for every 5 morale points you have, or every 6 morale points. Again, don't go off my memory. That's why they got the rule book for you to look at. So you starting out with your 33 morale, you get 6 initiative points, and you start with 10 supply points, which right here is you resolve the airlift. That's going to check to see how many supplies the Luftwaffe can drop. So again, we just go back to the charts, look here at the airlift table. I'm going to roll my die 6. So I rolled a 4. The weather right here, since it's poor weather, I just look down here, 4. That would be 2 supplies, but since my Luftwaffe commitment is strong, I get to add 2 to the die roll modifier, pushing that to 6, which again puts it 4. Then also there's some other things here, like if Luftwaffe was weak or you're running out of airfields. So I'm actually going to get 4 supplies this turn. So I just bump that marker up, put my SSI back to 10. And then from there, I mean, you're moving units. And as you do certain actions, you take certain amount of supplies. And this is what, again, I'm just so excited. So I'm sorry if I feel like I'm just jumping all over the place. But here's what is so cool. You can't transfer initiative points from turn to turn because that's going to be based on your morale from turn to turn, which can be affected by a lot of things going on here. But your supply carries over from turn to turn. So you might find yourself really debating on, okay, do I use all my supply? Because if I only get 4 supply points the next turn, there's not a whole lot I can do. So you might be tempted to want to use everything all the time, but you, in trying to balance your supply, you might have to only do 1 or 2 things a turn. Like, you've really got to think that out. Okay, so here's why I find that system very exciting. It puts a lot of decision making in your hands, because one of the things you have to do is pay supply points to make sure that all your units are in supply. But you can actually undersupply your troops, which, if you undersupply them enough, that could give you some penalties and suffer some casualties out on the board. So there's that too, is okay, if I really need to push an offensive or two, do I undersupply some of the units to have enough supply? I mean, it's all a balancing act. And I like that because how you play the game is not based on a bunch of tables that kind of randomly decide what happens, like how you play your turn out. You're making those decisions. And those decisions have either immediate consequence or down the road consequences. Because again, if I use a lot of my supply points early on in the game, I might not have supply points later on to fight the war at all. So this is a game that's going to take a while for you to play often to try and find that balance between how often I should do things, how often should I try to reinforce and resupply before I push through. And what's cool is that SSI we talked about, that strategic influence that you have. There was one of the notes that I was reading was mentioning how that could have effects on other parts of the game abstractly. You might not see it represented right away because the better supplied and equipped that the Stalingrad region of the game is, that might mean you're taking resources away from other parts of the game. So to see how all that fits together, I think would be very interesting. Okay, so I said I wouldn't show you how to play. This wasn't a full example of a playthrough by any stretch of the imagination, but it kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at when you set up the game. One of the things that you might have to look at as you go along is how close Hoth is getting. So there's a tracker for that. Uh, Once he gets all the way down here to 5, he's going to break into one of these areas. And then you're going to try to link up your German forces with Hoth to make connection, and you're going to score victory points. And that's the big thing, is this is where your chance to alter history is. How many German units can you rescue out of the cauldron? Or are you going to surrender? Well, I think that's probably been a pretty lengthy kind of overview of the Kickstarter and a little bit about the gameplay. So what I'll do is I'll kind of end it here, and then later, like I said, give me a few days. I want to make sure I can play the game a little bit, get some of the terminology and things under my belt a little bit better, and then we'll come back and show you like a full turn or two so you get a feel for how all the pieces work. But I hope that this preview gives you an idea of what you're getting into when you look at the Kickstarter. And remember, I really want that mounted map, so please consider this Kickstarter. Again, I think the price is good. I think you're going to be happy with the components. So far, I'm happy with the game. It's looking really good. And yeah, leave some comments what you think. And if you do the Kickstarter, let me know. I'm curious to know how many people, you know, join on to the Kickstarter because of the video. I'm just curious if this was something that really helps you make that decision. All right, anyway, take care, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.